What if I told you that one of the best guides for a trader's entire career, I'm talking the whole thing, from crazy ambition and crisis all the way to failure and recovery, was actually written thousands of years ago? Sounds a little out there, I know, but we're going to dive into this because the ancient biblical book of 2 Kings, well, it offers this absolutely startling picture of how trading careers are built, how they're sustained, and yeah, how they're ultimately destroyed.
So, the source material we're digging into today, it makes this really bold claim. It says this ancient text is basically a playbook for high-stakes performance. It lays out these two completely distinct paths, right? It shows you the full life cycle of success and failure, and the big takeaway is that the kind of decline we sometimes see, it's not inevitable, not at all. It's actually chosen, one small decision at a time.
And that really brings us to the core conflict here. On one side, you've got this path of faithful inheritance. Think of it as building on a solid foundation of knowledge, of discipline. But on the other side, well, that's the path of gradual compromise. And that's the tricky one. It's that slow, almost invisible drift away from your rules that, you guessed it, ends in total disaster. So let's see how this whole journey gets started.
All right, so every trader's journey, it starts with ambition, right? But this is a very specific kind of ambition, and it's perfectly captured in the story of the prophet Elisha. He's the one who inherited the mantle from his legendary mentor, Elijah. And the thing is, he didn't just want to keep the legacy going. Oh no, he wanted to expand it, to make it bigger.
And the mindset here is absolutely key. This wasn't about greed, not at all. It was about recognizing that the next generation, well, they're going to face new challenges, different problems. They're going to need more skill. For you as a trader, this is huge. It means you don't just blindly copy your Metris system. No way. You absorb it, you master it, and then you build on top of it so you're ready for the markets of tomorrow. So, okay, how did he earn it? It all came down to a test of pure commitment. 3 separate times his mentor Elijah tried to send him away, and 3 times Elisha flat out refused, saying, "I will not leave you." And the lesson here is so important. It's that persistence in the right relationship, that relentless, stubborn commitment to mastery, that's what secures the inheritance. You just don't get that double portion by being a casual student. It just doesn't work that way.
But look, ambition and a strong foundation, that's just the start of the story, because every single trader sooner or later faces their own personal crisis. We're talking about that extended, just gut-wrenching, painful drawdown. And in the book of 2 Kings, they have a name for this. They call it the Siege of Samaria. Now, to really get the pressure here, you have to picture the scene. It is chaos. The market is in total freefall. The famine is so bad that people are paying an insane price for something completely worthless. I mean, this is the moment of absolute maximum despair, That feeling when it seems like your account is just never, ever going to recover. And it's right at this moment, right in the thick of it, that Elisha speaks up. And right then, we hear it. We hear that voice that every single trader recognizes during a deep drawdown. It's the voice of doubt. You have a high-ranking official, a guy who should know better, looking at the devastation and basically saying, nope, there's no way out, we're done for. He has lost all faith in the process. He's completely convinced that not even a miracle could turn this thing around. But Elisha's conviction, wow, that's the lesson. He doesn't just offer some vague hope. He gives a specific time. Tomorrow about this time. Think about that. The turn is already scheduled. And here's the big takeaway for every trader out there. The ones who abandon their system right at the point of maximum pain, they're the ones who get absolutely trampled when the good times inevitably come roaring back. Your job is to hold the line.
Okay, so you survived the siege. You made it through the drawdown. You think the worst is over, right? Well, that's when a new, much more subtle danger creeps in. And it's called the slow drift. It's that gradual pileup of tiny little compromises that slowly pull you away from the very principles that made you successful to begin with. And this leads to one of the most powerful metaphors in this whole story. After generations of neglect, of things just going wrong, the king, Josiah, rediscovers the Book of the Law, his kingdom's original foundational plan, the rule book. For a trader, this is like finding your own trading plan again. The one you wrote when you were clear-headed, focused, and disciplined before all the bad habits crept in.
And Josiah's reaction, this is what's so important. He doesn't just make a few tweaks here and there. No, he launches a total reformation. He goes through and removes every single idol, every single deviation from that original plan. And that's the trading lesson right there. When you finally see that gap between your plan and what you're actually doing, the correction has to be urgent and it has to be complete. You don't just tinker around the edges, you go back to total discipline. Period.
Which, of course, brings us to the inevitable end of that path of gradual compromise.
This is the moment when the bill comes due. It's where all those small, ignored problems, all those little shortcuts finally pile up and demand payment, all at once, in one catastrophic event.
And what we're looking at here is literally the anatomy of a blown account. You know, the fall of Jerusalem wasn't because of one single battle. It was the final result of generations of bad decisions. And it's the exact same way with trading. A blown account is almost never about one single bad trade. Nope. It's the final invoice for all the little compromises. Moving the stop loss just one too many times, sizing up just a little too big, taking that one revenge trade, skipping the general review for another week. No single act did it. The accumulation did.
Yeah, the consequences are severe. The final price tag is always proportional to the debt you've racked up. But, and this is so important, here's the crucial note of hope from our source text. Exile is not the end. The story doesn't just end with the city in ashes. Restoration is always on the table. In fact, the very next book in the story is all about the return.
So we're going to end with this challenge. The source material reminds us that this total catastrophic fall, it was preventable. It was preventable at every single step along the way, except for the very last one. And that leaves us with a really tough question to ask ourselves. Are you at that last stage yet? Because if the answer is no, there's still time to act.